See, one of the things that I see as I read this book, uh, some of the thoughts that crossed my mind was this big shift that's happening in the way we work, right?
Mm,
So if you look at it 100 years back, we
yeah.
were in a industrial mindset or a factory mindset, which is really around, uh, you know, uh, you're pretty much mass producing goods, and therefore you're getting the stuff out of the factory, right?
Hmm.
Now I think you're moving to an era where you're actually doing knowledge work, and therefore the need for mastery in a job is more important than what it was before, right?
Yeah.
Yet, do you believe the organizations leave at one point? I think let's leave the students aside, but I'm a beginner getting into a work world, and I'm actually moving up my career. One of the challenges that I find is if you don't have a mastery mindset, okay, what happens is you just are not phenomenal in your job. The Edison example that you
Yeah.
give in the book, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that if I'm actually in a job and I'm at a workplace, the fact that the new workplace of the future requires a mastery mindset, and therefore if I were to actually agree on that as the direction that workplace is changing, what would you say are the principles that I need to build in what I do to build mastery in anything that I do?
Well, I think again, understanding these basic principles of learning is so important because I think this is a topic we're not really taught that much about. So, I mean, if you could go through, 16 years of schooling and never encounter a single class where they talk about how learning works, how memory works, all the research we've discovered about this subject. And that's somewhat unfortunate because, it makes people, it puts people in a position where they're often, they're relying on their own intuitions about what's the right way to learn and how people improve and how they get better at things, which can sometimes be accurate. I don't want to say that, like, if you spent 16 years learning in school, you have some idea about how to pass tests and study for things. But there's also a lot of blind spots. And I even covered some of these in my last book. Like, one of the classic ones is retrieval versus review. Students, when you give them these like measurement tests, they think that reading their notes over and over again is the right way to remember the information, that is a better method. But actually, when you test them, they do better with repeated testing than with repeated reading and rereading. And so there's a lot of these little blind spots. Spacing is another one. People tend to think you learn more when you're cramming, but you actually are more efficient learning when you space things out. Um, but I think even at a deeper level, there's issues with, we're talking about mastery in the long run. One of the things that I think is a common belief is that you get better and better just with more experience. And this is one of the things that I've had to push back on because Malcolm Gladwell published a very fun and engaging book called Outliers, and it popularized this idea of research called the 10,000 hour rule. And as with all popularizations, I don't want to be too hard on Malcolm Gladwell because you're always simplifying things and people take ideas in ways you didn't expect. But one of the ways that he took in that he didn't expect, or that I think is not a good reading of the research, is that, well, the key to getting good at something is to spend 10,000 hours doing it. And that's not actually what the research shows. That spending a lot of time doing something leads to confidence and it leads to fluency. Now, fluency, I think we all understand from a linguistic point of view, is the ability to talk without interruptions. But it has a more general meaning in cognitive science, which is that you can do something with low effort. So think about driving a car. In some ways, it's weird to think about driving a car fluently, but it is a skill that you've learned to the point, if you drive regularly, that you don't have to process a lot of mental bandwidth to think about doing it. I drove here to work this morning and it was just sort of in the back of my mind. I wasn't really thinking about, like, okay, where is the brake pedal? Where is my 10 and 2 with the steering wheel? I'm not thinking about that, right? But am I a great driver? No, probably not. I'm a middling driver. Is there better levels of driving skill I could attain? Definitely. Definitely. Like, you compare me to like a race car driver or someone who, drives a taxi. Well, in Mumbai, for instance, I would be a disaster driving there, right? Like, it's a much more chaotic, frenetic environment to drive a car in. If you drive there, you're a much better driver than I am. And so, why is that? Why is it that I can spend lots of time driving and my skill level is essentially flat? And this is related to what you're talking about. You work your job, it's stressful in the beginning, you're learning a bit, but then after like 5-10 years, you're not a top performer, but you're not getting that much better. You could spend another 10 years and all that's going to change is it's going to be more comfortable, more fluent as it is. And a big part of this is what I talk about in the book is Anders Ericsson's research on deliberate practice, which is this idea that simply doing something over and over again tends to just make it more automatic. It doesn't necessarily make you better at it, or if it does so very slowly. And so often what we need to do to master our skills when we've reached that fluent stage is a kind of unlearning, is a kind of, okay, we need to bring back the deliberate attention, make it more effortful, focus on things that have long since been pushed to our subconscious to actually make improvements. And that's uncomfortable and it's difficult. And so I think that's one of the real reasons why you need this mastery mindset to make progress. Because just showing up at your job and just doing it for another 10 years is not going to make you that much better once you've reached that plateau. It's just going to make you more comfortable.